The phone rang in the quiet apartment, cutting through the soft hum of the morning. Evelyn Carter, 72, sat in her favorite armchair by the window, staring out at the New York skyline. The city moved relentlessly below her, taxis honking, pedestrians rushing, the distant wail of a siren. But inside, her world felt suspended, fragile, and achingly still. She picked up the phone, expecting a routine call, maybe a neighbor, maybe a friend. But the voice on the other end made her heart stop. "Mom, we're selling the apartment," said Madison, her daughter, with a tone so casual it sent a shiver down Evelyn's spine. "I already handled everything. We need the money for our Europe trip. Don't worry, you'll get your share. Eventually." Evelyn's hand trembled as she held the receiver. 45 years she had devoted to this daughter, raised her, nurtured her, and now a single call had shattered the illusion of love. "I what?" Evelyn's voice was barely audible. "Mom, it's all taken care of. Bye." Madison hung up before Evelyn could say another word. She sat there, the phone heavy in her hand, and for the first time in months, she didn't cry. A strange calm settled over her, almost alien. And then she remembered. 3 months ago, before her husband, Robert, had passed suddenly from a heart attack, he had handed her a manila envelope. "Evelyn," he had said softly, "if something ever happens to me, open this when you're ready. It's everything. For you." She had placed it in the drawer of her dresser, and grief had made her forget it. Now, with the coldness of her daughter's betrayal burning in her chest, Evelyn realized she was ready. She rose slowly, her joints protesting, and made her way to the bedroom. The envelope lay just as Robert had instructed, waiting patiently. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were legal documents, property deeds, bank statements, and a letter written in Robert's precise, familiar handwriting. "My dearest Evelyn," it began, "if you're reading this, it means I am gone. I have worked quietly all these years to secure our future. You were always rich, but now, on paper, you truly are. The apartment building where Madison lives, the brownstone on Fifth Avenue, our little lakeside retreat, all of it belongs to you. I hid it from everyone to protect you and to keep our daughter from seeing money before she was ready to respect it." Tears blurred her vision, but they weren't tears of grief. They were a mixture of relief, astonishment, and determination. Her husband, even in death, had planned ahead, and now she held the power. The next day, Evelyn visited her lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, a kind man who had guided the Carters through decades of family business. "Evelyn," he said after reviewing the documents, his voice tinged with awe, You are the sole owner of multiple properties and substantial investments. This is extraordinary. And legally, Madison had no right to sell the apartment or the brownstone." Evelyn nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. "I don't want to take legal action, at least not yet. I want to do this my way." Mr. Hargrove raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Your way?" She looked out the window, watching the city bustle below. "Yes," quietly, patiently. "Let Madison think she has taken everything. Then, when the time is right, she will realize just who truly holds the cards." The weeks that followed were a strange duality. Publicly, Evelyn remained the grieving, unassuming widow. She smiled at neighbors, accepted their condolences, and appeared fragile. Privately, she studied Robert's documents meticulously, learning about the scope of their wealth, the intricate business dealings, and the hidden properties. She discovered that Madison's husband, Edward, had made questionable investments and taken loans against the apartment without realizing Evelyn's ownership. The stage was set, and Evelyn could see it clearly now. One evening, as the city lights reflected off the windows, Evelyn sipped her tea and whispered to herself, "Madison thinks she has won, but she has no idea. Her mother is ready. And for the first time since Robert's death, Evelyn slept soundly. A plan had taken shape, and with it, a new strength, quiet, patient, unyielding. The following morning, Evelyn awoke before dawn. New York City was still asleep, the streets wet from an overnight drizzle. The streetlights reflected in puddles like liquid gold, and a soft fog clung to the skyline. She sipped her coffee, staring out the window at the quiet chaos of a city that never truly slept. She remembered Robert's envelope again. The weight of it seemed heavier now, more tangible. She had spent the night thinking, planning, imagining the surprise her daughter would feel when the truth came out. It was more than just money. It was proof of a life her daughter had taken for granted, a lesson in humility that would be unforgettable. Evelyn carefully retrieved the envelope from her dresser. The manila paper felt smooth beneath her fingers. She took a deep breath and began sorting the documents. There were deeds to multiple properties, the brownstone in Brooklyn where Madison and Edward lived, a downtown loft that Evelyn had always thought was just a small investment, a lakeside cabin in upstate New York, an entire apartment building in Manhattan. Her hands trembled slightly as she traced the names on the deeds. Every single property was legally hers, under Robert's meticulously designed trust. He had done everything quietly, ensuring his wife would be protected, even if the world turned against her. At the bottom of the stack, she found a small folder with bank statements and investment certificates. The numbers were staggering, far beyond anything she had imagined. Robert had been a man of humble work, but a shrewd mind. Every sacrifice, every penny saved, had multiplied silently over the decades. And then there was the letter. My dearest Evelyn, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer there to guide you. I know life has been cruel at times, but you have always been stronger than you realize. Madison is clever, but she is young, impulsive, and untested. She must learn that actions have consequences. Use these documents wisely, my love, and do not act in anger. Act with patience and intelligence. You always have been wise. Now the world will see it too. Evelyn's chest tightened as she read the words. Tears threatened to fall, but she blinked them back. This was her moment, the moment to transform grief into action. She spent the day researching Edward's financial dealings. It turned out he had taken loans using the apartment as collateral, unaware that the building was legally Evelyn's. Small mistakes, overlooked contracts, weak spots, everything could be leveraged. And Evelyn, patient and methodical, had all the time in the world. By evening, she began to draft a plan. Publicly, she would remain the sweet, grieving widow. But behind closed doors, she would reclaim every piece of her life and subtly turn the tables on the daughter who had dared to betray her. Her first target was simple, the brownstone. She needed to gain quiet, unquestioned control without alerting Madison. She called Mr. Hargrove, her lawyer, and explained the situation. Mr. Hargrove, I want the sale of that apartment undone. Madison has no right to it, she said calmly. I want it done discreetly. No confrontation, no media, just the law doing its work. Her lawyer hesitated, impressed by her resolve. Mrs. Carter, this is going to take time, and legally it's delicate. But yes, it's possible. Completely possible. Evelyn allowed herself a small, private smile. Good. Time is my ally. That night, she sat by her window and watched the city lights flicker. Somewhere across town, Madison was packing for Europe, unaware that her carefully laid plans were about to unravel. Evelyn sipped her tea, feeling a thrill she hadn't felt in years, the sweet, quiet power of being in control. She thinks she has won, Evelyn whispered. But patience, my dear, patience. She hasn't seen the woman I truly am, and for the first time since Robert's death, Evelyn felt alive. Calm, determined, unstoppable. The city hummed with life outside Evelyn's apartment, a constant tide of noise and motion that had once overwhelmed her. Now it was a background rhythm, a soundtrack to her quiet, deliberate plotting. She moved through the day with careful precision, her outward demeanor that of a frail widow still grappling with grief. Neighbors greeted her with sympathetic smiles. "Evelyn, dear, are you holding up okay?" Mrs. Langley asked as she passed by, carrying grocery bags, and smiled softly, nodding. "Thank you, I'm managing." Her tone was gentle, calm, almost fragile. But inside, her mind was alive, strategizing, analyzing every detail of her daughter's life and the mistakes her husband had protected. Even her daily routine became part of her plan. Every coffee shop visit, every stroll through the park, allowed her to observe quietly. She noticed Madison's favorite florist across town, the cafe where she always met clients, and the small offices Edward frequented for his questionable deals. Every detail was a thread Evelyn could later pull. In her apartment, Evelyn pored over the documents again. She mapped out her properties, investment accounts, and legal leverage on a large sheet of paper. The brownstone where Madison and Edward lived was her priority. She knew Edward had overextended financially, that the apartment's value was rising, and that Madison had no idea of the legal strings holding everything together. Her heart beat steadily, a calm drum guiding her through this quiet war. She was not angry, not yet. This was not revenge born of rage, but of justice, a careful reclaiming of what was hers. By afternoon, she had scheduled a meeting with Mr. Hargrove. "Everything is in order," he said, scanning the files again. "Evelyn, you truly have more power than you realize. You can undo Madison's sale of the brownstone without her knowing, and you can regain control over every asset quietly." Evelyn leaned back, her fingers tapping the armrest lightly. "That's the plan. Let her think she's taken everything. Let her live in the illusion of victory for a while. Patience is key." Mr. Hargrove nodded, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "You're extraordinary, Evelyn. I've rarely seen someone so calm and meticulous, especially in your position." She smiled, not out of pride, but satisfaction. "Thank you. This is the only way to teach her and Edward the consequences of their greed." Later that evening, Evelyn walked along the riverside near her apartment. The wind carried the faint scent of the East River, mingling with the city's unmistakable aroma of asphalt and late-night street food. She stopped to watch the lights reflecting off the water, thinking of her husband. Robert had always been quiet but deliberate. Every investment, every decision, every hidden asset had been calculated. And now she could finish what he had started, not for wealth alone, but for dignity, for justice, for the satisfaction of seeing truth restored. Her phone buzzed with a message from Madison. "Mom, don't worry. Everything's settled. We leave tomorrow. Can't wait for Europe." Evelyn read it slowly, savoring each word. A small smile curved her lips. "Enjoy Europe, Madison. Your mother is busy preparing your welcome home." For the first time since she had received that call, she felt a quiet thrill, a sense of power she had never imagined. The storm was coming, but for now, she remained the calm eye at its center. "Soon," she whispered to herself, gazing at the skyline. "Soon, everything will change." And with that, Evelyn returned to her apartment, ready to watch the pieces move exactly as she had envisioned. The morning light in Evelyn's apartment was softer than usual, filtered through the tall buildings of Manhattan. Sunlight pooled across the hardwood floor, catching the edges of legal documents spread neatly across her dining table. Each piece of paper represented a secret her late husband had kept, a carefully constructed fortress of wealth and security, all for her. She sipped her coffee slowly, savoring the aroma, letting the caffeine sharpen her focus. Today was the day she would begin turning that fortress into a weapon, a subtle but unstoppable force to reclaim what was hers. Mr. Hargrove arrived promptly at 10. He was older, reserved, with a calm precision that Evelyn had come to trust. "Mrs. Carter," he said as he laid his briefcase on the table. You've taken control of an empire without even realizing it. I've reviewed the documents again, and legally, every asset is untouchable by Madison or Edward. But we need to be careful. They are unaware, and we want it to stay that way until you're ready. Evelyn nodded, her eyes scanning the documents. I want every property, every bank account, every investment under my name, quietly. No alarms, no confrontations. Let them think they are in control for now. Her lawyer nodded, impressed. Very well. First, we tackle the brownstone where Madison and Edward live. The apartment was sold under false pretenses, and the contract can be nullified immediately. Legally, you can reclaim it without them realizing it. Evelyn leaned back, imagining the moment. Madison would finally learn she had never held any power at all. Next, she moved to the Manhattan loft. Edward had taken out loans against it, confident in his mistaken assumption of ownership. Evelyn studied the statements carefully. Every loan, every debt, every missing signature, all loopholes that she could exploit quietly, allowing her to regain control without creating immediate conflict. She looked out the window. The city below was alive, unaware that a quiet storm was brewing in the heart of one of its buildings. Patience, Evelyn, she whispered. Observe, prepare, then strike. Mr. Hargrove had brought an updated set of papers detailing Madison's and Edward's financial vulnerabilities. They've been reckless, he said quietly. This is more than just the apartment. They've leveraged assets they don't legally own. When the truth comes out, the consequences will be severe. Evelyn's lips curved into a faint smile. Exactly as it should be. She spent the afternoon with Mr. Hargrove, outlining the first moves. Initiate the legal process to nullify the apartment sale. Secure all bank accounts and investments. Gather documentation to cover every eventuality. Evening, Evelyn was exhausted but exhilarated. She had never felt so alive, so aware of her own power. Grief had been replaced with determination, sadness replaced with strategy. Later that night, she sat in the dim light of her apartment, reviewing the plans once more. Every step had to be precise, silent, and traceable. Her daughter would return from Europe in weeks, and when she did, she would find that the world she had tried to control had quietly slipped from her grasp. Evelyn closed the envelope Robert had left her one more time, tucking it back into the drawer. She whispered softly to the memory of her husband, "Thank you, Robert. You built the foundation. Now I will construct the walls." The city outside continued its relentless hum. But inside Evelyn Carter's apartment, a different rhythm had begun, a heartbeat of patience, power, and unyielding resolve. The storm was approaching, and Evelyn would be ready. Evelyn awoke to the soft glow of dawn spilling into her apartment. The city below had already begun its morning surge, cactus honking, joggers weaving through the sidewalks, and the distant hum of subways. Yet Evelyn felt untouched by the chaos. Her focus was absolute, her mind sharp, and her plan gaining momentum with every passing hour. Madison was in Europe, or so she believed. Every call, every message had been carefully crafted to appear carefree and urgent. Evelyn read through the text again, a small, private smile forming at the corners of her lips. "Mom, we're leaving today. Everything's packed. Can't wait to see Europe. Don't worry about anything here. We've handled it." Evelyn sipped her tea, her eyes narrowing with quiet amusement. Her daughter thought she had orchestrated the perfect escape, free to enjoy her European adventure while leaving her mother behind. What Madison didn't know, however, was that Evelyn had spent weeks uncovering the cracks in her life. She had tracked Edward's financial mistakes, the loans he had taken using property he didn't legally own, and the careless deals that made him vulnerable. Every misstep was a thread Evelyn could pull, and she intended to pull them all, delicately, invisibly, untraceably. She began drafting her notes, a careful map of every asset, every liability, every opportunity. Her strategy was simple: let Madison enjoy the illusion of control while quietly reclaiming every property, account, and legal right. By mid-morning, Evelyn had compiled a full dossier. It included the brownstone in Brooklyn and the legal loopholes for reclaiming it, Edward's reckless financial ventures in Madison's name, bank accounts and investment portfolios secretly under her control. She would need to assert authority without alerting Madison. Then she called Mr. Hargrove. "Mr. Hargrove," Evelyn said, her voice calm, deliberate. "Begin the process on the brownstone. Madison and Edward must remain unaware. I want this handled quietly, professionally, without a trace that I've moved." "Understood, Mrs. Carter," he replied, the faintest edge of admiration in his tone. "It will take time, but it's entirely possible. You have leverage they couldn't even dream of." Evelyn hung up, leaning back in her chair, the city lights reflecting faintly in her eyes. For the first time in months, she felt the thrill of anticipation. This was not vengeance born of anger. It was a meticulously orchestrated dance of justice, patience, and intelligence. That afternoon, she observed the streets through her apartment window, imagining Madison navigating the European cities, blissfully unaware of the silent storm brewing back home. She thought of the hotel reservations, the flights, the excited selfies her daughter would be posting online, all while Evelyn's quiet reclamation progressed steadily. As dusk fell, Evelyn walked along the Manhattan waterfront, the cold breeze tugging at her scarf. She let the wind carry away the memories of grief, replacing them with a new focus, her own power, her control, and the inevitability of the lesson Madison would soon learn. "You've flown across the ocean, my dear," she whispered to herself, "but your mother remains the anchor of this family. And soon you'll realize no distance, no scheme can change that." The city lights shimmered across the water, casting reflections that seemed to flicker like invisible whispers. Evelyn felt the calm before the storm settle in her chest. The pieces were moving. Madison and Edward were blind to the reality Evelyn had quietly constructed. And as the night deepened over New York City, Evelyn Carter smiled, fully aware that her long game had only just begun. The apartment felt quieter than usual, though the city outside never slept. Evelyn sat at her dining table, documents neatly stacked, laptop open, and a sense of purpose coursing through her veins. Weeks of careful planning had brought her to this point, the first moves of her quiet, invisible campaign. She called Mr. Hargrove once again. "Begin transferring all the legal control of the brownstone into your management," Evelyn instructed calmly. "Madison and Edward must not suspect a thing. Everything must appear as it always has." Her lawyer hesitated for just a moment. "Mrs. Carter, the way you're orchestrating this, it's unprecedented. You're playing a long game with meticulous precision." Evelyn's lips curled into a faint, satisfied smile. "I'm simply restoring what's mine quietly and letting time do the work of revelation. Patience, Mr. Hargrove, patience." Lawyer moved papers and signed documents. Evelyn turned her attention to Edward's financial oversights. She reviewed the loans he had taken out against properties that legally belonged to her. Each mistake he had made was a key, a lever that could allow her to regain total control over the apartment building without ever confronting her daughter directly. She set up a discreet schedule of notifications with the banks and legal offices, ensuring that all her moves were invisible. At the same time, she kept her public persona intact, the grieving, fragile widow who relied on neighbors' sympathy. She smiled at the doorman, nodded to the shopkeepers, and accepted kind words from friends. Nobody suspected the quiet storm brewing inside her apartment. By mid-afternoon, Evelyn had arranged everything. All her properties were now under her direct control. The brownstone's paperwork was legally hers, and Edward's loans were technically invalid, a ticking time bomb waiting to awaken. Sitting back, she let herself breathe for the first time in weeks. She walked slowly to the window and watched the Manhattan skyline. Lights flickered across the buildings like stars fallen to the earth. Somewhere out there, Madison and Edward were still blind to the fact that the foundation of their world had shifted beneath them. She whispered to herself a low, quiet vow. Everything is under my control now. And when the time comes, they will see who truly holds the power. Evening fell, and Evelyn moved to the kitchen to prepare a simple dinner. The aroma of roasted vegetables and fresh bread filled the apartment. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, relishing not the food, but the satisfaction of knowing that her careful planning was beginning to bear fruit. For Evelyn, the world had narrowed to two things: patience and strategy. One wrong move by Madison or Edward would soon be corrected, and when it was, the lesson would be unforgettable. She closed her laptop, arranging the remaining documents in order, and walked to the living room. Sitting in her armchair, she gazed out at the city one last time before nightfall. A sense of quiet triumph warmed her chest. The storm had begun, invisible, silent, unstoppable. And Evelyn Carter was at its center, calm, patient, and fully in control. The city was awake before Evelyn, its restless pulse vibrating through the streets of Manhattan. But inside her apartment, there was a stillness, a calm before the storm she had so patiently built. Today, the first move would be made. She had spent weeks studying Edward's financial habits, the loans he had taken out, the investments he had mismanaged. Each oversight, each assumption of control had become a thread she could pull quietly, without Madison or Edward ever suspecting. Evelyn picked up the phone and called Mr. Hargrove, began notifying the banks about the irregularities in Edward's loans. She instructed calmly. All transactions must remain discreet. Do not alarm them, but ensure that any claim of ownership or misuse will be flagged. Let the process run quietly. Her lawyer's voice was cautious but admiring. Mrs. Carter, your precision is remarkable. If handled correctly, Edward won't even know what hit him. Evelyn smiled softly, a mixture of satisfaction and resolve. Exactly. This is about control, not confrontation. Let them unravel themselves. The day passed in quiet anticipation. Evelyn maintained her public persona flawlessly, the gentle widow who went for walks in Central Park, greeted neighbors politely, and accepted small acts of kindness with modest gratitude. Yet every interaction, every phone call, every glance at her laptop reinforced the silent web she was weaving. By late afternoon, subtle alerts began coming from the banks and investment accounts. Small discrepancies were flagged, contracts were questioned, and Edward's assumptions of control began to falter, all without a single confrontation. Evelyn watched the reports carefully, her pulse steady, her mind sharp. She allowed herself a small smile. Madison's carefree European adventure was unfolding far away, and Edward was beginning to feel the first stirrings of panic, though he didn't yet know why. The first domino has fallen, Evelyn whispered to herself, her eyes glinting with quiet triumph. And there are many more to come. That evening, she prepared a light dinner, the aroma of roasted chicken filling the apartment. She ate slowly, savoring the calm satisfaction that came from knowing her plan was unfolding exactly as she had envisioned. Later, she sat by the window, watching the city's lights flicker like distant stars. Somewhere across the Atlantic, Madison was raising a glass of wine in a European cafe, unaware that her carefully orchestrated escape had already begun to unravel. Evelyn's lips curved into a subtle, knowing smile. The storm had begun, invisible yet unstoppable. And she, the quiet widow who had been underestimated, was at its eye, calm, patient, and fully in control. Soon, she whispered. Soon, they will understand who truly holds the power. The night deepened, but Evelyn's resolve only grew stronger. The first strike had been made, and the road ahead was clear. The lesson, when it arrived, would be unforgettable. Evelyn awoke to a rainy morning, the drizzle painting the Manhattan streets in silver streaks. The city seemed quieter, subdued, as if it sensed the tension brewing inside her apartment. But Evelyn was fully alert, her mind sharp, her plan unfolding with deliberate precision. She began the day, reviewing the latest reports from Mr. Hargrove. Edward's financial web was unraveling slowly, loans questioned, contracts flagged, accounts frozen. Yet as she sifted through the documents, something unexpected caught her eye. Emails hidden within Edward's accounts hinted at a secret she hadn't anticipated. It seemed that Edward had been funneling funds from a business venture overseas, one that Madison had believed to be legitimate. But the venture was failing, dangerously over-leveraged, and he had been lying to his wife about its stability. Evelyn's heart quickened. This revelation changed everything. Madison's European adventure, funded by her mother's ignorance and Edward's deception, was built on a foundation of lies. She leaned back in her chair, letting the weight of this knowledge settle. So it's not just greed, she murmured. It's deceit, and they've underestimated me at every turn. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Mr. Hargrove, his expression serious yet tinged with anticipation. "Mrs. Carter," he said, handing her a folder. "This is unexpected. Edward's dealings are more precarious than we imagined. If we move carefully, we can ensure that every piece of property, every account, and every legal right is firmly under your control before Madison or Edward realize what's happening." Evelyn opened the folder, scanning the documents. The implications were staggering. Not only could she reclaim everything she had lost, but she could also orchestrate a revelation that would leave her daughter and son-in-law exposed, vulnerable, and humbled. She sat in silence for a moment, letting the possibilities unfold in her mind. Then, with a calm decisiveness, she spoke. "Prepare everything. Every account, every deed, every investment. This time, we will not only reclaim what is mine, but also ensure that the truth reaches them in full force. Patience alone is no longer enough. It's time for precision and timing." Mr. Hargrove nodded, impressed by her clarity. "Understood. Every move will be discreet, calculated, and completely under your control." Evelyn returned to the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. The city was alive, oblivious to the silent drama unfolding in one of its countless apartments. "They think they are in control," she whispered to herself, a faint smile curving her lips. "But they have no idea the forces they have awakened." The storm outside mirrored the one inside her. Evelyn felt a surge of energy, not anger, but empowerment. Every hidden asset, every overlooked document, every secret her husband had preserved for her was now a tool. She moved through the day with meticulous care, adjusting accounts, sending discreet instructions to banks, and ensuring that Edward's missteps would leave him exposed. Madison remained in Europe, blissfully unaware, while Evelyn silently tightened her grip on the life that had been stolen from her. That night, she sat in her armchair, rain capping softly against the window, and allowed herself a quiet moment of satisfaction. "They will learn," she whispered, "that underestimating your mother is the gravest mistake anyone can make." Closed the folder, her mind already moving forward. The revelation had shifted the game entirely. Now the path to justice was clear, and her victory was inevitable. The airport was buzzing with travelers, rolling suitcases, and announcements echoing through the cavernous terminals. Madison and Edward had just landed from Europe, excitement still visible in their tired eyes. They thought the adventure had been a success, blissfully unaware that back in New York, the life they had assumed was theirs was quietly slipping away. Evelyn was at home, sitting in her armchair, documents neatly stacked on the dining table, her gaze calm but sharp. She had prepared for this day for weeks. Every property was secure, every bank account under her control, and every legal safeguard in place. But confrontation wouldn't be physical. It would be psychological, subtle, and inescapable. When the door finally opened and Madison stepped through, Evelyn rose slowly. Her posture was poised, her expression serene. "Mom," Madison's voice held the same mixture of surprise and forced warmth she had always used. "You're home," Evelyn smiled, a calm, quiet smile. "Yes, dear. Welcome back." She gestured toward the living room. "Sit down. We need to talk." Madison hesitated but complied, sitting across from her mother. Edward followed, looking uneasy. Evelyn's eyes met his, calm and unwavering, and he shifted in his seat. "I hope Europe was everything you dreamed," Evelyn said softly, her tone neutral but loaded with unspoken weight. "It was amazing," Madison replied, a nervous edge creeping into her voice. "And, about the apartment?" Evelyn raised a hand gently. "Let me handle that. You see, everything you assumed about control, ownership, and authority was not entirely accurate." Madison's face flickered with confusion, then a hint of fear. Edward leaned forward, sensing the shift in the room. Evelyn continued, her voice steady, deliberate. "The brownstone, the investments, the bank accounts, everything you thought you had a claim to is legally mine. Every transaction you made, every loan Edward took, has been flagged, quietly, efficiently, and fully under my control." Madison's eyes widened. What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Evelyn replied, "that for years you believed you had power over me, over what was mine. But you were mistaken. And now the truth is unavoidable." Edward's face paled. The first flicker of panic appeared as he realized the scale of Evelyn's quiet maneuvering. Madison gripped his arm, trying to process the revelation. Evelyn's lips curved into a small, controlled smile. "I've been patient. I've let you think you were in control. But patience has its limits. Every mistake, every deception, every assumption you made has been accounted for." Madison's voice trembled. "Mom, I didn't what, dear?" Evelyn asked softly, leaning back. "Love me, respect me, value the life that raised you, the sacrifices that built the life you've enjoyed." Silence filled the room. The weight of Evelyn's presence, her calm authority, and the undeniable truth of her power hung heavily in the air. The quiet widow they underestimated was no longer a figure of pity. She was a force, deliberate, intelligent, and unstoppable. Evelyn spoke again, her tone unwavering. "This isn't about vengeance. It's about truth. You believed you could discard me, deceive me, and leave for your European adventure with everything you wanted. But reality has a way of catching up. And now it has." Madison and Edward could only stare, their confidence shattered, as Evelyn quietly, deliberately, revealed the full extent of her silent control. For the first time, the daughter who had once thought herself untouchable understood. The woman she had underestimated was not just surviving. She was ruling the life they had tried to take, and their illusions of power were collapsing in real time. The apartment was silent, save for the soft hum of the city below. Evelyn sat at the dining table, her hands folded calmly over the documents that had once been her husband's secrets and were now her instruments of quiet justice. Madison and Edward remained seated across from her, stunned into silence, their eyes wide with disbelief. Evelyn leaned back, letting the weight of her presence fill the room. "Do you understand now?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. "Every choice you made, every assumption, every act of deceit has been accounted for." Madison's voice shook. I didn't know. We didn't know. You didn't see because you refused to," Evelyn replied. "You thought I was weak. You thought your mother, a widow, was powerless. But every action has a consequence, and every deception has a cost. This cost is now clear to you. Edward's head dropped into his hands. The realization hit him in waves, the mismanaged loans, the fraudulent assumptions, the overconfidence that had led them both astray. Everything they had built on lies was now crumbling quietly under Evelyn's control. Evelyn continued, her tone even, measured. I've never wanted to hurt you, but you left me no choice. Respect, honesty, and love are the foundations of family. You ignored them. You chose greed, and now you will learn the consequences. Madison tried to speak again, but Evelyn raised a hand, gently silencing her. You will have time to reflect. You will see in every detail of your lives that underestimating your mother was the gravest mistake you could have made. She stood slowly, the authority in her posture undeniable. This is not vengeance. This is education. Consider this a lesson in respect, integrity, and humility. I am still your mother, but I am also the one who holds the truth, the law, and the power you ignored. Then lowered her gaze, tears forming in her eyes. Edward remained frozen, pale, and shaken. For the first time, the illusion of control they had so confidently held was gone. Evelyn walked to the window, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline, the city lights glittering like distant stars. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm and satisfaction. Her mission was complete, not through anger or confrontation, but through patience, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. Let this be remembered, she whispered softly, as the day you realize the strength of a mother who will never be underestimated. Turning back to them, she added with quiet authority, now, you must rebuild, not through deceit, not through greed, but through honesty. Learn from this. Live with it. And perhaps one day you will understand the true meaning of family. The room remained silent. The lesson had been delivered, its weight undeniable. Evelyn had reclaimed her life, her dignity, and her power, all without raising her voice or striking a single blow. For the first time in months, she felt complete. The city outside continued its relentless rhythm, unaware that within one apartment, a quiet storm had passed, leaving clarity, justice, and a mother's unwavering strength in its wake. Evelyn sat back in her armchair, letting the moment wash over her. The storm was over. The lesson had been learned, and she, calm and composed, remained firmly at the center of her world.